2 days and nights of utter peace lie behind us. Only then and now does an egg grenade stumble over into our territory, or we hear the short bellowing of a machine gun or the whistling of a fireball. Then all is quiet again. This is a great position to be in. We sure could spend a few weeks in this Grand Neue hamlet. It would have been so nice, but it wasn't meant to be. During the afternoon, the guard replacements arrive and with them orders. Security detachment is to leave Grand Neue, Lieutenant Hegner to report February 5th, 1942 for orientation in Jakoblewo. Krach! Bang! What scheisse! Once again, this is sure looking like another inferno. Oh well, cursing is of no help. The 299th Panzerjäger Battalion, the good old midwife, has to jump in. Our clothes are all packed. We deploy early tomorrow morning. Strenuous march amidst a strong blizzard. On the road, partisan fire. Because we are Frontschweine and not the young nobility of the supply lines, we make short work of the situation. The closest village bursts into flames. The fireworks feel warm in this damned cold. By midday we arrive in Jakoblewo. A few hours earlier, strong red aircraft carpeted the place with bombs. Every corner of the place is still on fire. Thank God they did not hit our ammunition or supply facilities. Lieutenant Hegner brings new orders. We are to immediately march on and take up position tonight near Leski. You notice anything, soldier? Take up positions at night? Boys, that stinks. I am carrying a few worn-out, dirty guys to Leski. Their faces turn serious. Listen to this! A low rumbling and thundering drifts over from the east. That is the drum fire from Leski. Everything went well, without any losses, and we move into the trenches and holes. Together with my group, we squat inside a potato cellar. Upstairs, we can hear the thundering crashes, sometimes close, sometimes far away. Hissing shells of all calibers are driving into the ground, ploughing into the hard, frozen ground, as chunks of earth the size of a table are catapulted meters away. The old Leski Vererans know all too well what this hellish concert means. A little later, the red masses will advance again, and as so often is the case these days, will get stuck in our defensive fire. Day after day, and night after night, the Reds keep storming us. The strongest artillery fire is between Charkow and Kursk, potentially the most favourable breakthrough point to our supply line. Only here is it possible to start deploying the planned grip against Charkow. Taking this hill along with the ruins of Leski is a decisive action for capturing the throughway, the road to Bielgorod-Charkow, as well as Kursk. The amount of blood that has been shed for this dirt heap is incredible, and there will be more. For hours now, the earth has been splitting open under terrible drum fire from the Reds. Chains of Russian Martin bombers crash their loads into the heap of ruins that is Leski. After 2 storming attacks during the night and 3 during the morning, we are now expecting a 4th wave. By 13 o'clock hours, B position in the west is able to count 1,600 impacts from the heaviest calibers on the hill. Battle headquarters suffers a direct hit. The whole crew has been buried under the rubble. The Wessendorf artillery suffers a direct blow. Klemmer's dead body is recovered from the rubble. In the evening, the 4th attack of the day has been withstood. Meanwhile, the mortars have destroyed our foxhole. The fuel stored there for the close-range fighting of the tanks has ignited. All our belongings have been burnt. The poor pig, who has no more blanket in 35°C temperatures, is now also lacking his water bottle and cooking utensils. Hold out, boys! We cannot falter! God damn this hell! There is not a single day or night without 3 or 4 vicious storm attacks from the Reds. 4 hours on end, their racing drumfire battles our meagre covers. We fear this relentless hammering from the Bolshevik armies. The mass attacks of the Red infantry do not scare us as much. These are mostly poorly and hastily trained men, who walk upright and stoically into our defensive fire. The extremely heavy tanks that accompany the attack are much more dangerous. Our defence, including artillery as well as tank fire, is virtually powerless against these rolling monsters. Tank shells, in addition to special ammunition, are deflected without effect from the heavy armour. Without obstruction, the Red fighting vehicles crisscross over rubble and our positions. On deck at the very top are 11 to 12 boys, who have in their pockets tins of our Schokocola, chocolate provided to German soldiers. and in their fists hand grenades which they are throwing into our defensive lines. At first we did not take them seriously, these hoodlums, but soon we come to know better. Tough and agile like cats, they make us suffer considerable losses. They have a whole company of these dangerous children, the proletariat young guard over there. I struggle to describe in detail the horror of the hand-to-hand fighting with these children. Anyone who has not been here will never be able to understand what unfolds here. Grown men, many of whom have sons who are the same age, have had to engage in brutal, bloody fights with the children. I will not be able to forget these horrible scenes for a long time. Parallel to the northern position, there runs a gorge into which our guns are only able to fire with difficulty. This is a most favourable deployment area for the Red Army. When the wind is favourable, we can hear from the front-line trenches the screaming and cursing of the commissars, and shortly thereafter, 2-3 gunshots, then the screams of the victims, and finally the silence of the grave. A few minutes later, they rise in white masses out of the gorge and run by the hundreds, driven by the mad force of their politniks, right into our deadly machine gun fire. Prisoners and deserters tell us about the terrible losses suffered over there. The commissar's pistols, the fear of a bullet to the neck, drives this herd forward again and again. When the enemy attack collapses on February 11th, their own grenades are thrown into the masses who are flooding back. We are not afraid of such a crowd, which is forced, out of its own fear, to attack us. If only the murderous artillery fire, which rips just about everything on our side to shreds, would come to an end. If only we had weapons that could crush the tanks playing this murderous game with us. On February 12th, our last 2 cannons are run over by 52-ton tanks. Supported by a number of aircraft, the Reds attempt a large-scale offensive around noon. For a day and a night, there is bitter fighting over the higher elevation positions. Our losses are exceptionally high. The average company size is now only about 30 men. Slowly, very slowly, despair creeps into the hearts of our men. We group leaders have to use all our power to keep the men alert and ready to fight and defend. A difficult task indeed. Our words sound utterly unconvincing, as we ourselves no longer believe that we will make it out of here alive. Mass grave Lesky. At the same time that the Reds commenced their large-scale offensive on February 12th, a 40 kilometres wide, 70 kilometres deep breach into the front line was achieved by 3 Bolshevik tank divisions to the south of Charkow. At this time, we know that over there Guderian Sisi is at the counterattack. But we also know that both breakthrough operations, here and over there near Charkow, were directly connected, which was part of the large-scale Bolshevik plan to encircle Charkow, thus isolating the northern part of 6th Army. Only through our brave and tough resistance was this undertaking successful. We can hardly believe it. Reinforcements have arrived. The boys bring good news with them. Tanks are expected to roll in soon, and even today assault guns will be deployed and used right here. My mood barometer climbs back to nice weather. We will hold on to our coffin come what may. In the early morning hours, 30 German attack planes suddenly arrive. Like sparrowhawks, they dive into the damned battery positions near Schochowo. All over the place, dirt and metal spew upward in high fountains. For today, though, all is quiet. At night, everybody gets a few hours' sleep for the first time in a long while. Yesterday's air raid not only destroyed several of the enemy's guns and cannons, it also squashed the Reds' preparations for the attack that was to follow. Today, too, our air comrades appear around noon. In 3 waves of 10, they plunge, howling into the enemy position. Thick yellow-black smoke stands for minutes above the gorge on the other side. At dawn, completely to our surprise, heavy tank forces suddenly attack. Accompanied by 2 battalions of Caucasian sharpshooters, they succeed in breaking through on the right and left flanks of the coffin. By 13 o'clock hours, Lesky has been hopelessly encircled. The Morse code from our signals unit is never silent. SOS calls go out to the north and the south, to the division and the corps. We receive the same answer from both sides. Reinforcements have left 3,576, Yakobliwo, on 2, 18 in the direction of L. Damn it, they should have been here long ago. What are we to know about the fact that somewhere between Jacobluo and here, a decorated soldier has fought his first and last fight? Why we are not informed about such events will forever be a mystery to us. Men marching in their battalion, 180 comrades bound for Leski who have never encountered active battle, were massacred like animals by the Reds last night. But what do we know about that? The night turns awful. Without pause, the Asians run up our hill. Again and again we encounter murderous close-range fighting. For how long will we be able to hold out? Where are our replacements? We have very little ammunition left. Well then, shoot slowly and don't forget to save the very last bullet. At dawn, Oles dies, the fifth and last man of my group, from bayonet wounds to the chest. We are all slowly facing the end. Too bad living has been so beautiful. Despite the snowstorm which has picked back up, we are able to hear very faint artillery fire in the west. Could this be our saviour? The attacks from Leski are becoming weaker and weaker by the hour, and end completely by around noon. Suddenly several bombers appear. We take cover with lightning speed. But this time they are Heinkels, which circle 2 or 3 times, and then deploy the much sought-after ammunition and supplies. A few of our tanks and shooters are approaching from the west, replacements and guard changes. I see quite a few guys, strong as bears, with tears in their eyes. During the night, a reconnaissance patrol makes contact with the relief troops arriving from the west. The Reds are retreating and flee to the east. At 9 o'clock hours, German tank forces reach Leski. The reception is indescribable. Full of deep joy and gratitude, we embrace our black brothers, our saviours. After a short break, they begin to storm the enemy's position. We cannot allow the Reds any room to breathe. We have to clean up over there finally, once and for all. The afternoon passes with the orientation of the new replacements. Relieved. A small number of dirty, dilapidated soldiers pass the area where our dead comrades lie. Half of them will remain here. Here, on top of the coffin, these brave men have found their final resting place. We have dug 3 large mass graves. The red shells have done their dirty work here as well. The ground has been ploughed from strong explosions. The contents of the graves scattered, ripped apart for the 2nd or 3rd time. An even more gruesome one will soon replace this horrible picture. After a 4-hour march, we reach the location where the Reds butchered the 180 men of the marching battalion. These animals, these subhumans, even had the time to mutilate the naked bodies of the dead soldiers and pile them up in large heaps. According to information from prisoners, these Schweine even took a dozen photos of this place of horror. 4 weeks later, on March 25th, hundreds of thousands of leaflets with reproductions of these pictures are dropped over Charkow-Bielgorod. Physically and emotionally exhausted, our small group reaches Jacobluo at dusk. Although everyone here knows the sorry sight of the Leski relief unit, this time someone turns his head around to look. We all resemble madmen. Full beards cover our pale faces. Some of us are wearing Russian caps, while others are wearing the yellow-brown-red army coats, sheep pelts and sacks wrapped around their boots. Besides our weapons, we no longer have any gear left. No blankets, no bread bags, no water bottles or cooking utensils. Everything, and I mean everything, has been completely destroyed for a 3rd time on February 20th. Now, 2 sleds are sufficient enough to pull away the last 2 machine guns. Our 3 cannons are lying shredded and overrun at the coffin, back in Oberjan. Those days in Leski have affected us deeply on the outside as well as on the inside. Some are suffering from a bad case of nerve fever, others from severe frostbite. Rheumatism is also rampant. My leg hurts badly, probably from the last wound. But shit, we are soldiers and not old wives. And if any one of us has a nervous breakdown out here, so be it. Later at home, the love and patience of our wives will heal many surface and inner wounds. On all sides of the front, heavy defensive battles are being fought. The winter that the Reds have placed all their hopes on is coming to an end. It is still terribly cold. Icy blizzards are still whipping over the vast plains. Now or never is the motto which Stalin uses to force hundreds of thousands to run and bleed to death. We have reached the climax of the winter battle. Everybody performs like a superhero these days. All sections of the unit, with their last reserves, take part on the defensive line. Defense means to ward off the enemy. Warding off does not imply waiting until the enemy arrives, until he takes the initiative and determines the outline of the battle. Warding off also demands counterattacks, engaging in reconnaissance patrols to find out the enemy's intentions in order to beat him while his strategies and plans of action are taking shape. Warding off means conducting small skirmishes to acquire favourable positions. It not only means being consistently on guard, standing one's ground in murderous artillery fire, holding out during attacks from the air, but also standing up to the power of tanks. It demands being prepared day and night. Warding off also means not being tired for a single second, always having your hands on your weapon. This eats at your nerves and takes its toll on the depleted strength of your body and soul. At home, they will never be able to have even a remotely accurate picture of the demands that this defensive fight in the East requires of us. Exhaustion, mobilization of willpower, and personal sacrifice. Up front are the infantrymen, then us, the tank hunters, their eternal companions and most faithful friends. We are the front line, closest to the danger. During these months we have seen nothing but snow, enemies, and desolate vastness. We experience nothing but danger and the battle of man versus nature. For days our boots do not come off our legs, and the warmth of a stove is far away. The cold temperatures and snowstorms shake us through and through, and even when we eat, one hand is always on our gun. One ear is always trained to the outside, listening for the enemy, even during those hours when combat has died down. Doubling one's own commitment and strength is required to compensate for the holes that death rips into our lines. The unwritten law of brotherhood and the moment's necessities demand nothing less. I could give hundreds of gut-wrenching examples and incidents of such selfless comradeship among us Frontschwein. What makes these defensive battles here in the East so hard and filled with deprivation is the sheer mass of men and material that the enemy throws at our front ruthlessly and relentlessly. It is the battle against the snow, cold, and ice. These are the difficult hours, when ammunition becomes scarce, and when from the other side more and new waves of men are thrown at us. These are the difficult hours when the soldier at the front line is waiting in vain for food and drink, because the supply truck is stuck in a snowstorm. This is what it was like in Leski, when the superior force appears to be suffocating. These are also the trying hours for the leaders who are often confronted with the decision: shall we hold out any longer? Haven't we already done everything humanly possible? And still, none of us complains, we who hold watch in the lonely foxholes of the East. None of us thinks of giving up hope just because a meal is missing. None of us thinks of cursing because our bodies have not felt the warmth of a stove for so long. We know that all of this is asked of us because the greater purpose of the war demands it of us. The winter battle during these months has become the Second World War for us. We have been forced in this defensive battle to encounter war in its harshest form, further amplified by the brutality of the enemy. Poland and France cannot be compared to the years of the Great War. Even we young soldiers know this from our own experience. The Eastern Campaign, however, and especially the weeks spent here, would stand up to any comparison with the intensity of the Great War. And this means in all aspects. It is trial by fire for the German army, for each and every one of us. And we are up to the test 100-fold, with a degree of duty and devotion which can truly only be appreciated by the direct leadership and the Führer himself. This man, who as an old frontline soldier, understands the thousands of horrors on the front line. We do not at all feel like heroes. We only want simple acknowledgement for our performance. We do not want to be pitied for our hard life. We only want the pride and trust of our homeland. It is one of the more bitter experiences for us fighters on the front, during one of the most brutal wars ever, when someone who does not know about all the misery and fighting in the trenches already believes and talks about a lost battle. Or furthermore, when for tactical reasons a village or section of land is surrendered back to the enemy. Those who speak like this trample on all the blood spilled while fighting for the ideal, and on the superhuman efforts which we take on with the last bit of our strength. What does it all amount to, such words like fighting and exertion? What can the words snow, bitter cold, ice, loneliness, mental burden, blizzard, freezing, and poor roads possibly mean compared to the reality. With those words, we connect a meaning from our European life which is not valid here in the East. Here they mean the exaggeration of the unbearable. Nature alone is presently throwing something into the battle, which can only be described as a gigantic intensification of the European winter. What Bolshevism throws into the field is completely opposite to any concept of true soldierly spirit. It is inhumane cruelty to the highest degree. Again and again, the Reds deploy a combination of artillery, tanks, aircraft, and infantry. Pure mass is the god to whom these infidels seem to pray and serve. They believe that the number is of decisive importance. We know all too well that this is dangerous. These days, however, it is becoming particularly apparent that the person, the individual soldier, can be more effective than sheer numbers and mass. More than ever, the burden of battle lies on our shoulders. Due to the snowdrifts and the icing of the roads, tanks and vehicles are stifled in their mobility and denied their utility. Sorry, but the little Panzerjäger sleighs have taken their place. Engines and machine guns suffer terribly in the cold. They may break down, but the human we cannot, otherwise the front would collapse. It is becoming apparent in this battle what a decisive role the mental acuity of each and every comrade plays. Here we stand, live, and suffer everything that humans are capable of enduring, from terrible cruelties to great atrocities. Who could possibly name all the acts that are perpetrated hourly out here on the front? Just like during the Great War, trench warfare, hand grenades, and the bayonet receive the highest of honours. Hand-to-hand combat is the horrible daily reality. Drum fire is the accompanying music to death. And despite everything, we stand like an insurmountable wall against the Red Witch's brew. May God give us strength to hold out during these most difficult days of winter. They have moved us from north to south and back again, from Proshoroka via Sonzewo and Baharo, always to where a fire needs to be put out. Tuesday we encountered a large-scale offensive from the Reds, which started on February 23rd, the anniversary of the founding of the Red Army. With huge mass deployments on the southern part of the front, this was the last great test of endurance for our forces. They were broken by our defences, fighting with all the strength we could mobilise. Surely the Bolsheviks will try more than a dozen times to break through our lines from now until the spring offensive, but their attacks will never regain such a dangerous reach. We know that we have lived through the most difficult part, and in only a short while spring will have sprung. There is still heavy pain in my leg. They have advised me to transfer to a field hospital. But I will hear none of this. There will be no way to pry me from here. So now I am lying flat on my back. Next to me there is a folding closet. Day and night I am on communication duty with the command posts. It is a task full of responsibility, and I am happy to be of some use. It is relatively quiet here, except for the aircraft visits, which occur with strange frequency. These guys have learned that this location is crammed with staff from every branch of service. Day and night there are alternating rounds of bombers which snot on the houses. But this is not of great importance, as the damage is only minor. Overnight there was an air raid warning. Orders to go on high alert were given. 3 heavy transport aircraft have flown in from the direction of Belgorod. Airborne units have attacked the General Staff Office in the Army Division the day before yesterday and caused a lot of damage. Guards are doubled and patrols are sent into action. During the early morning hours there is a raid, but their attempts at breaking through here are in vain, for the well-positioned fire of our batteries destroys the enemy's strength before they are able to prepare themselves. The evening passes quietly. Except for the guards and the outposts, everybody huddles in the huts, which are badly damaged by bullet fire. A candlestick is burning on top of a wobbly table, around which my men have congregated. Some of them are writing letters, others are engaged in heated discussions. I belong to the latter. Again there is talk of vacation, home, relief, and the many slackers. When the words behind the lines service and supply units are mentioned, an incensed howling erupts. All of us were very angry this morning at the supply line servants and kitchen bulls. Those guys squander their days with a warm ass, while we on the front hold down our positions all winter long in the snow and freezing temperatures. I know very well what the conditions are like for these fine comrades to the rear of the front line, in Sumy and Lebedin, and also know through numerous letters how much our frontline sacrifices are met with complete bewilderment by many at home. Here on the front, we who proudly bear the name Frontschweine have become an inseparable brotherhood of men who have been hardened, who have been welded together by death and blood into a close community. And all that these guys, full of dirt and lice, have to hold on to in order to persevere is one thing: love, the depth of which nobody at home can ever imagine. A boundless love and adoration for everything that says home. I truly believe that only those who encounter death breathing down their neck every day, be it in hand-to-hand combat or in the heaviest drum fire, are capable of such an unconditional love. Each and every one of us would gladly sacrifice his life for you at home. These are the troops who bear the brunt of it all, who stand at the very front line. This is what we think. To our rear are the supply and provisions units who already think much differently. Their fear of being deployed to the front line, along with their fear of us, becomes all-encompassing. And by the way, these are the guys who will be celebrated as heroes later at home, thanks to the bloody tales they tell. This I mention only in passing, since for the true soldier of the front, all of this posturing and pretense are totally inappropriate, as loud and boasting words do not fit our memories of the dear guys whom we've lost. Even further to the rear are the occupying troops, whose problems are with the whores and other womenfolk. These are the ones who are shown in the photos at home, who are wrapped in thick fur coats, grouped together in the snow and ice to form a nice picture. Oh, those poor guys, what a terrible Russian winter. Is there anyone at home who knows that these are the very fur coats that are sorely missed here on the front? Is there anyone who knows they are drinking with these women the very schnapps that would give us the gift of warmth and an hour of forgetfulness? And then, to the very rear, are the anti-aircraft crews at home. They aren't even aware that there is a war anymore, except for the fact that there is a higher percentage of women per anti-aircraft soldier. Come join us, you living room warriors. Relieve your comrades manning the 2 centimetres and 8.8 centimetres flaks. They deserve it, those dear brave guys. The supply department for these 3 groups are the 3 big supply filters. A filter permits the thin to go through, but traps the thick. Soldier, do you notice anything? We, the Eastern fighters, are not allowed to carry a weapon back in the homeland. Why? Yes, why indeed? The Reds are already deploying strong aircraft forces before noon. What is all this compared to Lesky? The day ends amidst weak attacks. During the night, there is a surprise attack from strong Bolshevik forces supported by tanks, which is brought to a halt, however, after a 2-hour battle from the defensive fire of our batteries. A few prisoners and deserters are being interrogated. The prisoners are part of a Russian raiding party. It does not seem to look particularly rosy over there. Provisions and ammunition are supposedly bad and insufficient. It is the job of the Reds raiding party to take prisoners and acquire automatic weapons. Today is relatively quiet as well. Only light harassing fire reaches us from the other side. Wonderfully warm, the sun is suspended in a marvellous blue sky. The ground has begun to thaw, the muddy season has begun. In a few weeks the ground will be dry again, ready for the spring offensive. Tomorrow we will be relieved. This time we are not looking forward to it. The days have been quiet for our standards. Only medium shell fire during the day, and at night occasionally a few weak attacks. What's that to us? We are used to a completely different set of circumstances from this winter. Too bad that we are leaving. It has been a great group here. The relief is accomplished smoothly. At noon, Russian fighters surprise us during our march. One man is slightly wounded by air fire. Without any further incident, we reach Obojan during the evening hours. Today I had the opportunity to read an interesting enemy news bulletin, which listed several numbers from the battles near Lesky. During the period between February 17-24, during which the Reds repeatedly focused their attack on the area of Osoro-Lesky, the enemy lost in 75th Infantry Division's sector alone a total of 20,000 men, among whom were 9,000 dead. These are, measured by the current fighting strength, approximately the size of 4-5 divisions. Add to this the number of prisoners and deserters. On other parts of the front, the circumstances are no different. From numerous prisoner reports, we learn that entire companies have been reduced to 20 or even 14 men. This indicates that things are not at all rosy over there. The incredible blood sacrifices that the Bolsheviks have made during these past winter months will also have a very negative effect on the approaching spring offensive for the Reds. Nevertheless, exaggerated optimism is not appropriate here. We know that the Soviets have not let this winter pass idly. Further to the rear, reinforced lines have been put in place. The industrial centres in the Urals have churned out a series of new and improved T-34 tanks. Every now and then, we are paid a visit by a few Soviet aircraft. They arrive humming, passing narrowly above our heads, and blanket us with their onboard fire. There is buzzing all around us, which means that we have to take full cover, and quickly. Those who are unable to find a hole in the ground climb into or rush under a truck and wait for this blessing to pass. Here and there, bombs are also dropped. A clear and cloudless sky, perfect weather for flying. Suddenly, in the middle of dinner time, our brave anti-aircraft fire starts barking. And while high above those small, dangerous black clouds develop, we start to hear a low hum and see 3 Soviet bombers pass over us. The anti-aircraft fire turns wild. We are all standing there observing excitedly, just as if this was a thrilling boxing match, the position of the shots. There, that was a hit. A cheer composed of multiple voices erupts when one of the bombers starts to trail, becomes unstable, sways, and then slides down vertically over one wing, trailing a long, dark smoke cloud behind it. Even before we are able to hear the dull explosion of the crashing bomber, we see back there, along the forest edge, the mighty mushroom cloud of smoke. The 2 other bombers have calmly continued their flight. There, one of us saw it first and is pointing with an outstretched right hand toward a minuscule point in the sky, which quickly grows larger and takes a straight course toward the bombers flying east. A Jaeger, a German fighter. Now the suspense starts to build. Long forgotten is the split pea soup. Split pea soup will be there another time. But you don't get to witness every day an air fight like this. As the fighter approached close to the bomber, at high speed, it suddenly pulls upward, floating directly above one of them, and then plunges from above in a steep angle toward the bomber, sending burst after burst into it. One appears, then another one, always short, well-aimed bursts. He then turns away without paying any more attention to the enemy. Initially, we are a little bit disappointed, but we then realize what is happening. Coming from an initially narrow, thin trail of smoke which the bomber seems to pull behind it, grows thick black smoke, a jet of flame, and then it plunges downward. At the last minute, the pilot ejects in order to save himself. But his parachute only floats in the air for an instant before it is pulled into the abyss by his own crashing machine. The fight lasted no longer than 2 minutes, by the time the fighter had already disappeared. The sky is blue and cloudless, just as peaceful as it was before. Even the split pea soup in our bowls stayed warm. That's how quickly it happened. Totally unexpected, the weather has changed overnight. A blizzard rages with a strength that we have not encountered all winter. I pity the sleigh units who were surprised by it in the open field. Our eyes are unable to penetrate more than 2 meters into this crazy flurry. In front of us are 2 en route sleigh units. We are very worried about them as they are several hours late. Only by the evening does one of the vehicles arrive. There is no trace of the second one. The storm has subsided. The sun hangs in the sky peacefully, as if nothing has happened. And yet, a lot has happened overnight. In yesterday's blizzard, the second sleigh unit missed the road and fell into a deep gorge. Our comrades froze to death during the night. And something else, even more serious, has happened. With the heavy eastern storm to their backs, the Reds have once again succeeded in blocking the highway near Drosti. In order to boost the counterattack, we reach the breakthrough point by around noon. The enemy's power has already been broken. There is not much more for us to do here. Our artillery has wreaked havoc in Drosti, which had been occupied by the Reds for a few hours. The beaten enemy had to leave hundreds of dead people behind. It is looking particularly gruesome on one of the village streets. Someone calls it the Avenue of Death. Others pick up the phrase, write it on a board, and attach it to a pole on the side of the road. Avenue of Death. Until the war ends, this part of Kurska Street will be named this. To the left, in a ditch, lies a dead female gunner. The artillery has mutilated her badly. One half of her still young face is completely missing. Her long blonde hair is hardly able to cover the terrible wound. If her grey-brown shirt had not been ripped open across her chest, I would not have known that a woman's fate had ended here. It is a strange sight for a soldier, who is only used to fighting against men, then to suddenly be confronted with the dead body of a woman. Occasionally there is a woman among the prisoners. Among them are bad, ugly bitches whose thirst for blood and brutality does not fall short compared to those of their male counterparts in the Soviet army. Mostly women and young girls, who have been pushed by Bolshevik pressure and instigation, leave a final reminder of their female dignity behind and dabble in the craft of men with a gun in their hand. A security mission calls us to Medvoskoye. This is also the temporary gathering point for what remains of the 299th Infantry Division and other units, which had been assigned to different groups. In terms of formation, we are commencing the cleansing of the front. Within a few weeks we will track to the north in the direction of Kursk, and will once again be under the trusted leadership of General Moser. Spring cleaning has also arrived on the front. It's the muddy season. Roads and streets, which were frozen solid only a few days prior, have now thawed and become bogs which threaten both men and animals with drowning. In many sections of our position there is nothing but dirty ice water for kilometres. During these weeks, on nearly a daily basis, we have to wade up to our chests through icy water in order to reach the staging ground of our attack with the enemy. By the end of the month I am ordered to undertake an important courier mission to Orel and Charkow. It would fill every page of this book alone to retell what we encountered there en route with the partisans and the dangers on the roads, which are mostly submerged in water. In Charkow we happen to get caught in a tank battle, and in Belgorod a heavy Russian attack blows up our store of ammunition. It's a miracle that we have come out alive. Before Kursk we are hunted down by Ratas, and my sidecar is riddled with machine gun fire. Near Ponary, a group of partisans try to capture us. In other words, we are glad as hell to be able to return to our group 12 days later. By the end of April, the division is pulled from combat. We reach Kursk via an overland march, as the roads are impassable. We continue to the north, and 2 days later reach the main railroad hub of Ponyary. We take up quarters in Beresowice. We are in the area of 2nd Panzer Army, and after the odyssey of the past winter months, we are finally able to return to Group Moser. Those wonderful days of rest suddenly come to an end on May 15th. In a rapid forced march, we are thrown to the southeast of Orel, into the very dangerous Luni sector. Forgotten are the winter and the muddy season. A stifling heat now hangs over our positions. Summer, with its scorching temperatures, has arrived almost overnight. Both the weather and the fighting are hot in this goddamned sector. Let's hope that these are the final weeks of trench warfare, and that soon we will move forward again. These brief summer months will soon be over, and then, yes, perhaps then, there will be for us an unfathomable event, a reunion with wife and child, with father and mother. May God grant us the chance to see our home once again.